in our country. So what, if anything, should the U.S. be doing? Debbie D'Souza was born in Venezuela and joins us to share her message about the true impacts of socialism. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So no doubt,
yes,
I want to begin with this in terms of what the president had to say last night. Speak to that and add in your personal experience, because that's really what people want to hear from you.
Well, President Trump was correct. Socialism is the opposite of freedom and democracy. And he laid it out so beautifully that the promise of socialism, free for all, everything free for everybody, is actually not true. What ends up happening is everybody becomes equally miserable. The only people that benefit are the government elite, the ruling class, and everyone else suffers from it. And the message is that socialism is not what kids think these days. They think it's cool, and they think it's free this, free that, free school, and it actually is not. It robs people. It robs the working class people from their labor, and you know that today. If I want to equate it to something, it would be slavery. It is present-day slavery. So I will go as far as saying that.
Debbie, I want to ask you about something the president did say in terms of what the U.S. should do. Listen to his message to the Maduro regime and the military specifically.
We want to restore Venezuelan democracy. If you choose this path, you have the opportunity to help forge a safe and prosperous future, or you can choose the second path, continuing to support Maduro. If you choose this path, you will find no safe harbor, no easy exit, and no way out. You will lose everything.
You're speaking to the military there in reference to them supporting the Maduro regime. Do you think that will have any impact?
I hope so. Maduro is a tyrant, and as you know, tyrants don't usually give up power willingly. The military in Venezuela is right now under his watch, and they are very, very subjected to him. So the only way that we can help, basically, is to talk to the military in Venezuela and ask them to please do the right thing and help get this tyrant out.
I want to go back to
I do believe it.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were just speaking on in terms of young people not really realizing what socialism is and what the implications are. We have this poll that 50%, this is a Fox News poll, 50% of self-identified liberals have this favorable view of socialism. So my question to you then is, you know, why do they seem to want to mirror a situation that we see unfolding in Venezuela? Also, when we hear potential 2020 Democratic candidates for president speak to the socialist agenda as if that's a favorable thing.
Well, they don't understand what socialism is. They hear the rhetoric and they fall for the lies. They think socialism is actually a good thing, that it's humanitarian, there were goods and services that they could no longer get. So people are literally starving in Venezuela.
Right. We've seen the humanitarian aid blocked
today. Yes. So the humanitarian aid is absolutely something that they need, and Maduro, being the tyrant that he is not letting them have it.
All right.
And so the only way to have that for the people is to remove that tyrant.
Okay, Debbie D'Souza.
Venezuela does not need socialism.
Right, and we do not either. Debbie D'Souza, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it, your time.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour. Kamala Harris says that she's not like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
In the Democratic primary, do you have to move more toward the Democratic Socialist part of the party?
I am not a Democratic Socialist.
Well, speaking of socialism, why the 2020 contender is trying to now disputed hate attack on actor Jussie Smollett. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with more on the viral controversy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So
Carrie, apparently
I will answer to anything from you, Heather. So Donald Trump Jr. says that Facebook-owned Instagram removed a post of his that mocked the Smollett story. So he later went to Instagram and complained, saying, "I get you want to censor any conservative voice, but there is literally nothing in here that wasn't covered in every news source. It was fine to discuss at length when it seemed to work against MAGA folks, but now it's apparently a hate crime fraud. It's too sensitive." Well, a spokesperson for Instagram later told the Daily Caller that his post was removed in error. Now, moving on to Facebook, two conservative authors say that their posts about the Smollett story were also banned from the site. One of them was from the Daily Caller's Jen Kearns. She was hit with a Facebook message saying that her post goes against community standards. And now folks on social media are sounding off. One person taking to Facebook saying unreal they would take it down, but hate speech towards conservatives is totally okay and can stay up. Wow. Another Facebook user says, if this sort of censorship continues, I am done with every media outlet that doesn't present both sides of the debate. This has happened so many times, and frequently Facebook says that the posts were removed as a mistake.
As a mistake.
But I mean, how many mistakes can you make before you see a pattern?
You got to figure out why those mistakes are happening and maybe stop it from happening in the future. So Ilhan Omar and this message that went out from Louis Farrakhan.
That's right. Okay, so as we know, Ilhan Omar had to apologize for some anti-Semitic tweets that she's made. And now, wouldn't you know it, she is seeing support from well-known anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan. Take a listen.
Sweetheart, don't do that. Pardon me for calling you sweetheart, but you do have a sweetheart. Because you sure using it to shake the government up. But you have nothing to apologize for.
A lot of folks on social media talking about this as well. One Twitter user says, just saw Louis Farrakhan telling Ilhan Omar not to apologize for her anti-Semitic comments. Absolutely disgusting and raw-hated. Tom tweets, will Ilhan Omar condemn the speech, meaning condemn Louis Farrakhan's comment, not the person most politicians want support from.
She may not have anything to say about that today.
That one,
but something everyone is talking about. This iconic picture everyone will recognize from World War II.
We have all seen this beautiful picture before, and the man pictured kissing that nurse in Times Square to celebrate the end of World War II has died. He reflected on that photo in his life, saying he was so happy that World War II had ended that he just grabbed her and kissed her, even though the two had never met before. His name is George Mendonza. He died 2 days shy of his 96th birthday, so he lived a long life. Shaw on Facebook says, one of the times the entire nation was relieved and joyous without exception. And Lorraine says, rest in peace, brave soul. Thank you for your service. His daughter says he was very proud of that photo and his service, so we do thank him.
Over the years, a lot of artists have replicated that in paintings and murals and things like that.
Just the emotion that you can see from that picture is fantastic.
Wonderful. We'll live on forever.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carly.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate it.
Well, the time now is about 28 minutes after the top of the hour, and 16 states are suing to stop President Trump's emergency declaration for the wall. Down as Deputy Attorney General next month. The departure coming after a bombshell admission from former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe about an inside job to remove President Trump from office. Deputy Secretary of Transportation Jeffrey Rosen expected to replace him. No school today for more than 250,000 children in West Virginia as teachers hit the picket lines just hours from now. They're upset about a new education bill that would use public money to fund charter schools and private school vouchers. The same teachers went on a strike for 13 days last year, which triggered a series of teacher strikes across the country. And California leads a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorneys generals taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court. They say the president moving money to build a border wall will hurt their economies. Well, Pennsylvania was not one of those 16 states filing a lawsuit against the White House's national emergency declaration. And is that proof that middle America stands with President Trump? Pennsylvania Congressman Mike Kelly joins us now to weigh in. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Heather. Thanks for having me on.
So as we begin our discussion, let's pull up a map of the 16 states that are suing. As we mentioned, Pennsylvania, not one of them. Why not?
So I think Pennsylvania has a little different view of what's going on. I got to tell you, our Coast Guard up in Erie, Pennsylvania, worked without pay for over a month during that shutdown. And these are great people, but keep in mind why it is that they go to work. They go to work to protect the American people. I think right now, at this point, Pennsylvania is looking at what's best for Pennsylvania. And I think we tend sometimes to make every issue a political issue and not a policy issue. When you go away from good policy and go to politics, it's not good for America.
So what happens next in this process, and what do you hope that Congress can do to come together and fix the situation?
Well, you know, Congress already developed these powers for the executive that they can, when put into an emergency situation, put these things into effect. So, listen, I know that with Congress, I've been there for 8 years now, the immigration problem has been a problem since day one. But getting people to sit down and come up with policy that's good for all America and not a political battle, again, policy over politics. If you can do that, stay on course, look what's best for the people you represent. I represent 705,687 people in western Pennsylvania and northwestern Pennsylvania. It's not what's best for me, it's what's best for them. And if we can't look at our jobs as protecting the American people, that's job one. If we can't look at the emergency situation we have at our borders right now, then I'm telling people you need to stop running for office to get elected looking for power and not looking for good policy.
Yeah, Congressman Kelly, you mentioned you've been there for 8 years. Do you find that the use of politics over policy has become more prevalent during the Trump administration?
Oh, sure. I mean, look, we know that everything that's taking place right now, for the most part, is about 2020. It's about the next election. It's about saying, you know what? Here's a duly elected president that 2 years into this administration, still by this certain group of people, he will never be accepted as our president. You look at what's happened in the past, and you say, you know, this is a man who came out of the private sector. That's where he doesn't fit in with politics as usual. He's looking at policy all the time. I will tell you what, I'll give this president and this first family the courage for standing up to a group of people that will never accept them and constantly degrade them and criticize them. It is absolutely deplorable what's taking on. If there's deplorables in the country, I will say there are, and those are the people that refuse to follow our Constitution, and the fact that we have a duly elected president in an administration that in 2 years has changed this entire economy around, and all America is better for it.
Speaking of a constitutional crisis, since you bring that up, what is more harmful to our country, the border security or the recent accusations of Democrats weaponizing the DOJ? Of course, I'm speaking of Andrew McCabe, Rod Rosenstein, and allegedly this, what some are calling this coup attempt, this secret meeting to try to oust the president.
Yeah, well, when you hear what these people talk about, I'm talking about these elite members of the FBI. Now, the FBI in general, we have wonderful people doing great jobs to protect the American people. I hear people saying this is chilling. I'll tell you what, it's not chilling. There should be an outrage in the American people that this small group of the elitists have decided that this president shouldn't be there. The American people made a mistake. They can't even come out with an insurance policy. If he were so lucky to get elected, they actually didn't think he'd get elected, so they never thought any of this stuff would come out. The American people should be outraged that this small group of people have decided to take it upon themselves to take an American president, duly elected American president, out of office using the excuse of the 25th Amendment, and then not even telling people what the 25th Amendment was about. It's about a president that's incapacitated, not a president you don't agree with. It is absolutely an outrage what's taken place, and these people need to be removed. And if you look at who the famous people are, I don't care who you talk about, but these leaders, these great American patriots, they're doing things that sounds more like a third world country than the United States of America.
Congressman Kelly, thank you so much for joining us this morning at this early hour. You are on point and fired up. We appreciate it.
We should all be fired up. Our country is in great danger.
Thank you so much. Well, some other stories that we're continuing to follow for you at this hour. This one that's got a lot of folks fired up. The brothers questioned in the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. In a joint statement, they say, quote, "We are not racist, we are not homophobic, and we are not anti-Trump. We were born and raised in Chicago and are American citizens." The brothers, once considered persons of interest, were questioned about, or they were questioned but released without charges. Smollett claims that he was attacked by men shouting MAGA country and racist and homophobic slurs. His lawyers deny reports that it was a hoax. Police want to question the actor again. Well, many now say that Smollett's accusations put President Trump's supporters in danger. If police find his claims to be false, conservative radio host Larry Elder says the actor should be the one charged with a hate crime.
Question is, why do so many people believe it? And the answer is they despise Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump's supporters are racist. And Donald Trump's supporters are not only racist, they're also homophobic. And they're also people that engage in violence. So they wanted to believe it and ran with it, and now they're embarrassed. Isn't it good news this is not true? Isn't it good news we don't live in a country where if you walk to the street at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a sandwich, you have to be fearful that because you don't like Trump, you're going to be attacked? Instead of people being relieved, they're angry at people that are laughing at Jussie Smollett. Anybody who wore a mega cap after this incident had to look over his shoulder or her shoulder for fear that maybe somebody might do an act of retribution because of what allegedly happened to Jussie Smollett.
Well, Smollett says that he was attacked on a downtown Chicago street on January 29th while walking to a Subway restaurant at 2 in the morning. Much more to come on that. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour, and your safety at risk. The airline accused of mismanaging the weight of checked bags, sometimes as much as 1,000 pounds, putting planes full of people in danger.
This lie that's being put out that somehow being green and responsible with the environment means you have to hurt the economy, a lie.
And Cory Booker slamming critics of the Green New Deal. Is he right? We'll take a closer look. From LA to Tokyo. Tracy Crosco from our sister network, Fox Business, here with the new report. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Heather. Yes, the FAA is currently investigating Southwest Airlines. According to the Wall Street Journal, some Southwest Airlines made some mistakes that caused pilots to compute the wrong weights into planes before they took off. In some cases, the discrepancies were as many as 1,000 pounds difference. So, of course, knowing that there are some discrepancies there, this could cause some issues with the aircraft before taking off. Adjustments would need to be made as far as takeoff speed, cruising speeds, maneuverability, landing gear, all of that. Southwest Airlines says they are cooperating with the FAA. The FAA says that no accidents have been linked to any of these weight discrepancies.
But there have been accidents in the past that have been linked to weight discrepancies. So, I mean, that can be very serious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Senator Cory Booker downplaying reports over the cost of going green. He said, amongst some other things, and I'll paraphrase, this lie that's being put out that somehow being green and responsible for the environment means you have to hurt the economy. A lie. So he's saying it's not true.
Yes, Cory Booker making these comments yesterday while in New Hampshire, while he was, presidential campaign. Obviously, Booker said that it's possible to revive your economy and create a bold green future, citing his experience as the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Booker also said we environmentally retrofitted our buildings, saved taxpayers money, created jobs for our community, and lowered our carbon footprint. So, of course, knowing this Green New Deal, which would be a total economic transformation toward clean energy, among some other things, including some building upgrades across the country. Republicans, on the other hand, taking issue with that and the $7 trillion price tag of this proposal.
All right. Got to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, some other headlines for you quickly. This is pretty amazing. Police ramping up the search for a hit-and-run driver who sent a little girl flying through the air. Look at this. You can see the 7-year-old thrown several feet into the air. This happened in a California parking lot. Incredibly, the little girl walked away with only a few bumps and bruises. And there's a $2,500 reward for information on that driver who just drove on AI, improving access to the cloud computing services, promoting cooperation with foreign powers, and not citing any funds for AI research and development, though. So how do you think this will benefit us?
Right. So what this executive order does is it really rapidly accelerates America's pursuit of the sophisticated artificial intelligence technologies that are necessary to maintain our economic and military dominance. Okay. And this is really a direct response to reporting that the Chinese have been covertly increasing their autonomous weapons capability. And so we've seen that the Chinese military is working to increase its artificial intelligence, its autonomous weapons, make sure that we dominate that space.
And a way that countries like China are able to fulfill their aggressive geopolitical aspirations. Is it too late for us to jump from behind to ahead on them?
No, I don't think it's too late, but we're definitely going to face some barriers in the process. You know, there's a few problems that you know, we're going to be faced with to allow us to essentially win this modern-day arms race. And one of those problems is that we have some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley that can develop these algorithms and you know, create this information for us to use, but they're also the first people that cry foul and protest when it's being used for our military. And the Chinese, they don't really have to deal with that. Their government works hand in hand with our technology firms. And one of the problems is that we've got companies like Google, which we've seen in this recent project called Project Maven, which was a joint venture between the Pentagon and Google to create these artificial intelligence solutions to help our military with their drone technology, and they essentially started protesting. Again, the Chinese don't have to deal with that, so you know, they don't have those same issues. The other thing is that artificial intelligence really thrives on what we call big data. So when we're overseas, when the military's overseas and they're, you know, trying to root out the last remnants.
Ku Klux Klan hoods. Matthew Sears telling Salon.com, quote, in a few generations from now, finding a MAGA hat in your grandparents' closet would be like seeing your grandfather's or grandmother's face in one of those lunch counter photos harassing the black people who are trying to fight Jim Crow and win their equal human rights. Last month, you'll remember actress Alyssa Milano was heavily criticized when she called the MAGA hat the new white hood. She refuses to apologize. So we asked what you thought about this, and most of you thought that the Washington Post writer went too far. Patrick on Facebook says, when you can't wear a hat that represents our president without being threatened, there's a problem in this country. Anna on Instagram writes, that's a disgusting comparison. Shame on him. Just another insane person. Can't handle all the winning. And Sandra writes on Facebook, they know the campaign hats were brilliant and effective. They're attacking them because they do not want the 2020 campaign to be as successful. They will attack anything to win. Well, now it is time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Up first, the good. A pregnant waitress left in tears after a police officer leaves a $100 tip. The New Jersey cop stunning the server on his $9 bill.
I respect all officers, so I mean, it just gives me a higher respect for them and their job.
The officer also left the waitress a note reading, enjoy your first, you'll never forget. And up next, the bad, El Chapo, the alligator found protecting the drug house. Police finding the 3-foot beast guarding a stash of narcotics during a drug raid in Pennsylvania. Officials naming the reptile the notorious drug lord El Chapo, who was, of course, convicted last week. And finally, the ugly, this giant hawk caught on camera trying to steal a pet dog. The bird pinning the Yorkie to the ground outside a Nevada home. Yeah, the dog's 15-year-old owner forced to bash the bird with a pillow until the bird finally let go. The owner believes the bird is someone's pet. The dog, by the way, is okay. So that's the good news and all that. Wow. Well, that wraps up this hour of Fox and Friends First. Thank you so much for joining us. Fox and Friends First continues right now. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
It is Tuesday, February 19th, happening right now at 5 a.m. A Fox News alert. Rod Rosenstein is leaving the Justice Department within a matter of weeks, but insists it has nothing to do with the fallout from Andy McCabe's explosive accusations.
All right, so who will replace Rosenstein? We're live in Washington with more on that. Plus, thousands of liberal demonstrators spent President's Day protesting the Trump administration's national emergency as Democrats in power are looking to the Ninth Circuit Court instead.
Will their latest legal battle be enough to block the White House border policy? And here's a question. How many bath towels do you have at home?
Who cares? The brand new debate.
Social media
dividing
cares.
social media this morning. Fox and Friends First continues.
Jillian Mealy, as always, thank you for starting your day with us. Let's get right to this Fox News alert. Rod Rosenstein expected to step down as Deputy Attorney General next month. His departure coming after former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe revealed an inside job to attempt to remove the president from office.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with the latest on all this. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Jillian, good morning. Yeah, we've known and reported that Rosenstein intended to step down around the time a new Attorney General took office, but now we have a better timeline. It's going to be mid-March, and confirmation that Barr will replace Rosenstein with that man right there, Jeffrey Rosen, currently serving as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. Now, Rosen previously served as General Counsel and Senior Policy Advisor for the White House Office of Management and Budget under President George W. Bush, and before that, he was General Counsel at the Department of Transportation from 2003 to 2006. Now, this change comes amid the firestorm created by former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who believes he was fired for opening an investigation into President Trump, claims Rosenstein considered using the 25th Amendment to remove the president, and Rosenstein was willing to wear a wire. The president tweeting in response to this: the biggest abuse of power and corruption scandal in our history, and it's much worse than we thought. Andrew McCabe, FBI, admitted to plotting a coup, government overthrow, when he was serving in the FBI before he was fired for lying and leaking treason. Well, now Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham wants to know more.
It's one of the most significant moments in American history, if it's true. So what I'll do, oversight is part of my job. We do have checks and balances, so the Congress will watch those who watch us. I'll try to find out who was in these meetings and talk to all of them and figure out who's lying, because somebody's lying.
No timeline on when those hearings might begin, but an official announcement of the pick of Jeffrey Rosen could come as early as this week. Rob, Jillian.
All right, Griff, thank you very much.
All right, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein may be at this point accused of at least thinking about trying to pull a political coup against the president. But could their backfired intentions against the president expose potentially a deep state within the FBI?
According to former Deputy Assistant Director of FBI Counterterror, Terry Turchi, finding out who orchestrated these plans could reveal those operatives.
As we have a political party, the Democratic Party, turning harder and harder left, which in itself is a major national security risk, we also do not know exactly to this day exactly what happened in the FBI, whether there still exists within the FBI these kinds of issues, perhaps people appointed by McCabe before he left. And we need to get to the bottom of all these things that are still out there in the universe and all these loose ends. People need to know who orchestrated all this, because it is absolutely just unbelievable that there is not somebody behind all of this that pulled it together and compromised the FBI. And we're not even getting into the fact we could have had certainly we could have had anything from bribes to greed to ego.
Absolutely.
All of these things are factors.
Senator Lindsey Graham now planning to launch a hearing about comments made between McCabe and Rosenstein over invoking the 25th Amendment, and see who is telling the truth there.
California leading a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorneys general taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court, claiming the action is unconstitutional. This after the president declared a national emergency, allowing him to move about $6 billion in military funds to build a southern border wall. The states say moving money will hurt their economies. President Trump addresses the crisis in Venezuela, warning against the dangers of socialism.
Years of socialist rule have brought this once thriving nation to the brink of ruin. This will never happen to us.
Debbie D'Souza, who was born in Venezuela, joined us earlier and shared her thoughts on the president's speech in Miami.
Question the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. In a joint statement, these two say, quote, "We are not racist, we are not homophobic, we are not anti-Trump. We were born and raised in Chicago and are American citizens." Chicago police once considered the brothers persons of interest, but they were released without charges. Smollett claims that he was attacked by men shouting MAGA country and racist and homophobic slurs in downtown Chicago. His attorneys are denying reports and a lot of evidence now that this was all just a hoax. Police want to question the actor again, and he's trying to avoid it at this point. The fiancé of a missing Colorado mom heads to court today. Prosecutors will try to prove that there is enough evidence to put Patrick Frazee on trial. He is charged in the murder of Kelsey Barrett, who disappeared on Thanksgiving Day. And at this point, she and her body both have never been found. Barrett's parents claim Frazee claimed Kelsey over custody dispute surrounding the couple's one-year-old daughter.
No school today for more than 250,000 kids in West Virginia as teachers hit the picket lines just hours from now. They're upset about a new education bill that would use public money to fund charter schools and private school vouchers. The same teachers went on strike for 13 days last year, which triggered a series of teacher strikes across the country.
All right, did you get a chance to look up last night? A super snow moon. Yeah, me neither. Super snow moon lighting up the night sky. The brightest, well, look at that. That is beautiful. And largest full moon of the year. It'll officially reach its peak very early this morning when it is closest to the Earth, but it'll still be visible tonight. If you miss it overnight, if it's clear where you live, you're going to get another chance tonight. The third and final supermoon of the year is next month. It's cool.
I feel like there's so many names for these moons, like the super blood, blah, 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 moon, wolf. Janice, why do we keep adding more names?
That's a good question. Wolf, I believe, is because it comes in January. I'll have to Google this one. But you're right. There's a lot of them. It's kind of almost like an optical illusion, but it is very pretty when you look up in the sky.
It is.
You know what? It's cold outside.
Yes, it is.
And it feels cold because we've got a wind chill in a lot of areas. So it feels like minus 22 in Fargo. I know minus 2 in Sioux City. And it feels like 13 in New York City. So it's cool for much of the country. Past 24 hours, we're dealing with the potential for some snow across the Rockies. But our next big system is starting to develop in the Gulf of Mexico. And that is what is going to bring us a mixture of freezing rain, sleet, ice, snow, you name it, as it goes across the Ohio River Valley up towards the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast Wednesday into Thursday. So taking a look at it, we're going to see some significant snow across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, and then a mixture of yuck for parts of the Northeast and the mid-Atlantic. So forecast precipitation. It's the ice again I'm concerned with. We're also going to talk about the potential for heavy rainfall across the Mid-South, the Deep South, and then that icy mix where we could see the potential for significant ice on the roadways and the power lines across portions of the Appalachians, interior mid-Atlantic region. So those areas need to really pay close attention because that's when it's going to get tricky and we're going to have travel delays. I know. When is it coming? When's spring coming?
It's coming soon.
It is. It just sometimes feels a little bit longer than...
This is when it really gets bad because it's like you're so close.
You're there.
So long.
And like the groundhog says, early spring doesn't mean instant spring.
True.
Okay?
Okay.
That's all I got.
Groundhog has very little credibility at this point. Janice, thank you so much.
Thank you. It is 10 minutes after the hour. The crisis in Venezuela front and center as President Trump delivers a blunt warning. So, why should you care? National security consultant Rebecca Heinrichs joins us live to explain how the mess there impacts every one of us.
You know what they do? Call me an anti-Semite. Stop it. I'm anti-termite.
And you've heard some of the comments, anti-Semitic rants from Louis Farrakhan. Now he's defending freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Potential liaison office in North Korea. So what could that mean for our relationship? Here to weigh in is national security consultant and senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Rebecca Heinrichs. Thank you for your time this morning. Intriguing to hear about this potential liaison office. What do you make of it?
Well, it's a little bit too soon to get overly excited about it. This was something that the United States tried to do back in 1994, and then the North Koreans shut everything down and changed their minds. So, you know, as all things, when it comes to trying to make progress with the North Koreans, you know, take everything that comes out of the news with a grain of salt, because lots of things can crumble right at the last minute. But what the Trump administration is clearly trying to do is sustain the calming of relations between the United States and dismantle their nuclear missile program.
Yeah, it's a slow progress, but we have to remember how ugly it was getting under the last years of Obama. I mean, it was getting really close. If we look at a poll here, a Fox News poll, it shows that the major threat, what people think is a major threat to our national security, you can still see more than half of people saying North Korea is there on the list, because it wasn't that long ago that it was looking really bad and they were developing these weapons. But again, to be too optimistic, I mean, what are the chances that this country
even consider relieving sanctions?
Rebecca, let's talk about what's going on in Venezuela right now. And the president addressed this in Miami. Let's take a listen to that and get your reaction on the back end.
You must not follow Maduro's orders to block humanitarian aid. I ask every member of the Maduro regime, end this nightmare of poverty, hunger, and death for your people. Let your people go. Set your country free.
Rebecca, why should everybody in our country care what's going on there?
Well, first of all, this was one of the president's most powerful moments, I think, as commander-in-chief. He really painted this strong picture that we have the opportunity to get socialism out of the Western Hemisphere, not only just in our lifetime, but in the next couple of years, as the United States continues to pressure these regimes. It's worrisome because you have Democratic members of Congress who are promoting socialist ideals. And we have a cautionary tale happening right now in Venezuela, where socialism has crushed that economy in just a couple of decades. Families are starving. They don't have the medicine they need. They're leaving their country by the millions in the last couple of years. A couple 100,000 Venezuelans have settled into the United States looking for freedom and prosperity and just reprieve from their own dictatorship. And so this was one of the president's powerful moments to show that contrast between what the United States has now in a direction that we certainly do not want to head down that road.
For accusing a lobbying group of paying members of Congress to support Israel.
Sweetheart, don't do that. But you have nothing to apologize for. You were sent there by the people to shake up that corrupt house. Shake it up.
Farrakhan has a history of making anti-Semitic comments. President Trump has suggested Congresswoman Omar should resign.
Former 2016 Democratic presidential candidate is taking aim at President Trump's emergency declaration. Hillary Clinton questioning the president's effort to secure the border. The former Secretary of State tweeting, quote, the real national emergencies, relentless gun violence, children separated from their families at the border, climate change, and Americans dying for lack of health care.
President's Day saw thousands of people protest nationwide against President Trump and his national emergency over the border wall.
Yeah, this was one of more than 275 protests across the country. You can see the video right here, as several states, I think 16 at this point, and a number of organizations have all filed lawsuits against the president's declaration, most of that going to the Ninth Circuit. I went to Union Square Park late yesterday afternoon to talk to some of these activists, see what they had to say.
I'm here because I'm a progressive person.
What this president is doing to this country is unforgivable.
Sick of Trump, sick of the lies, sick of the destruction of democracy that's been happening in the last 2 years.
I think the president presents a legitimate threat. I mean, he's trying to bypass the will of Congress. If this isn't fascism, I don't know what it is.
Is he anti-immigration or is he anti-illegal immigration?
Oh, he's anti-non-white immigration is what I think.
The latest, the National Emergency Declaration.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
Ha, and ha. There isn't a national emergency on our border.
There's no crisis there. I mean, there's a crisis on the planet if you want to talk about climate change.
The national emergency is Trump.
What should our southern border with Mexico look like?
I mean, I think that we need
Any country needs to have secure borders, needs to have safe borders, and needs to treat people with compassion and dignity.
So you believe in some kind of barrier, but not a wall from sea to sea all the way across?
I believe that there are smart ways to control immigration in this country.
Do you think that we need...
I've never denied that we don't need like a safe border.
Right.
You know, like we need a safe border, but we have a problem, and building a massive wall is not really going to fix anything.
Do you think there should be any border at all between countries?
I don't know. I thought a great deal about it, and I'm not sure there should be a border.
I think we should have an open border.
An open border.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need a wall. To me, that's like $5 billion that could be spent on things that could make much more substantive change.
So he was one of a few people, there weren't that many actually, that were calling for open borders. He was also calling for free health care, all the free things that you're hearing from the far left right now. I asked him about the obvious expense of that. He didn't have much of an answer to that. But there were a lot of people there. There were a lot of moderate Democrats in that crowd, which is an interesting point to be made right now. I don't know what that says about the president at this point, but when you have protests where moderates are showing up, it definitely shows that he has crossed some sort of a line that the left has. So
all right,
that's what we made of it. Yeah.
Interesting.
26 minutes after the hour now, reports that Bernie Sanders is announcing a presidential run met with silence from Democrats, not getting a lot of attention. His socialist views, though, are gaining popularity among 2020 hopefuls.
So why are Democrats embracing Bernie's policies but leaving him behind? Our political panel is on deck to debate that coming up next. Attorney General next month. The departure comes after a bombshell admission from former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe about an inside job to remove President Trump from office. Deputy Secretary of Transportation Jeffrey Rosen is expected to replace him. California leads a multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's emergency declaration. 16 Democratic attorney generals taking the legal battle to the liberal Ninth Circuit Court. They say the president moving money to build a border wall will hurt their economies. And the big story everyone's been following, the brothers questioned in the alleged attack on Empire actor Jussie Smollett are speaking out. In a joint statement, the men say they are not racist, homophobic, or anti-Trump. They claim Smollett paid them to attack him. The actor's lawyers deny it was a hoax. Rob.
Some more headlines here. A second woman accusing Virginia's lieutenant governor of sexual assault makes a call for open hearings. Justin Fairfax's alleged victim says that she is frustrated by his calls for an FBI probe instead of public meetings. Meredith Watson, writing in the Washington Post, quotes, "Such investigations are secret proceedings out of the pun line." It's ridiculous. For each like or share their photo receives, they earn a point in this game. Authorities say the game is not only scaring parents, but it's a tremendous waste of police resources. Unbelievable. All right, Senator Elizabeth Warren is expected to unveil her universal child care plan today. The $70 billion per year program would be paid for with a wealth tax that she's proposing on the country's top earners. Warren's plan would reportedly cap a family's child care spending at 7% of their income. The government pays the rest. Some families would get totally free child care. Jillian, over to you.
Bernie Sanders is rumored to be announcing another presidential run, but those reports have been met with pretty much radio silence from the left. So why are they embracing Sanders' policies but not him? Joining me now to debate that is former Bernie Sanders national staffer Teslin Figueroa and senior advisor to George P. Bush, Ash Wright. Thank you both for joining us. I guess, Teslin, I'll begin with you. What do you make of the fact that, I mean, the socialist policies right now are ramping up, but not many seem too excited about Bernie Sanders at this point?
Of course. I mean, they're not excited because he's not a Democrat, number one. Number two, you know, he disrupted the system, you know, completely shook it up in 2016. 2020 will be much worse than 2016, which is, you know, he spent a lot of time making friends and, you know, making a nice, I guess, with Hillary Clinton. And unfortunately, that's not going to favor him this time. The Democrat establishment will make sure that Bernie Sanders doesn't have a chance in this 2020 election. But yeah, they all became progressives, and now all of a sudden everybody's on board with every Bernie Sanders policy, but unfortunately they'll just leave them hanging out to dry.
Well, let's take a look at some of these policies. That includes Medicare for all, that includes free college tuition and higher taxes for the wealthy. Ash, what do you say?
Well, look, I think Bernie Sanders actually did run a very good campaign against Hillary Clinton in 2016. He won 19 states. He took a very significant portion of the popular vote. Hillary Clinton, though, in turn won 85% of all of the superdelegates, which essentially gave her the nomination. I think what the Democrat Party is looking for here is they want Bernie Sanders' energy, his policies, but they want a Beto O'Rourke or someone that's younger than Donald Trump. And Bernie Sanders is one of the few candidates seeking the Democrat nomination that would actually be older than Donald Trump. And so they're looking for someone else to champion these policies. And that's essentially what's going on in the inside, in-depth part of the Democratic Party.
So, Telson, do you know who would be that person that Ash just described?
Well, I mean, I kind of disagree with him a little bit. You know, by working on the campaign, it doesn't matter if Bernie Sanders was 23, 35 or 45. They don't want Bernie Sanders, bottom line. They want a Democrat that is actually a Democrat, that is not an independent, that did not go against the establishment, period, point blank. So, you know, I don't know if these candidates will be able to pull it off or not. We're going to have a chance to see what their record is. Most of these candidates are moderate. They're not progressives. You know, even myself, I'm not a socialist. I lean moderate. So a lot of these folks are going to have to really determine who they are. And just running around saying you're progressive is just not going to do it. So it has nothing to do with his age. It's just Bernie Sanders, period. They don't like him in the discussion.
And we got a nod there from Ash. So with that parting nod, let's go ahead to this next topic here for a second. And let's talk about what's, a topic of conversation in New York and across the country, really, because it's the failed Amazon deal. Before we get into this conversation, let's go ahead and hear from both Bill de Blasio and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
If we're willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could invest those $3 billion in our district ourselves if we wanted to.
That $3 billion would go back in tax incentives was only after we were getting the jobs and getting the revenue.
Ash, I mean, some people say this is a gift to Republicans. I mean, what's going on with the Democrats here?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a gift to the Republicans heading into 2020. I mean, it's very difficult for a voter to try to determine what it means about tax breaks and, you know, what it means for raising taxes and lowering taxes out of Washington, D.C. But this is a clear divide between liberal economic policies and conservative economic policies. And so I think the struggle here for Democrats is as Bezos, steps back in Amazon and they try to choose a new state. If they choose a state that's a swing state that has a Republican governor like Florida or Ohio, Tennessee, etc., I mean, this will draw a clear line and be a clear talking point for not only the president, but for a swing state in 2020. And I think it's a real problem coming up for Democrats.
Teslin, final word. We have about 10 seconds left.
I mean, absolutely. The mayor is trying to, once again, position himself as a progressive when he is a moderate. He is pro-business. That's what separated him between him and Cynthia Nixon. And so he's absolutely right. Democrats are off message. They're not sure if they want to be progressive, moderate, and just kind of throwing things out there and seeing if it sticks.
Well, I think everyone agrees that Democrats have to get on message altogether if it's going to work out. So we will certainly see. Teslin and Ash, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It is 37 minutes after the hour. She urged people to drive trucks into crowds on Veterans Day. Now, this ISIS bride from Alabama is...
From our sister network, Fox Business, here with a new report out. Hey, Tracy.
Good morning. Yes, the FAA is currently investigating Southwest Airlines. According to the Wall Street Journal, some Southwest employees gave pilots the wrong information in terms of how heavy bags were, and then pilots put that information into the planes. So in some cases, there were discrepancies, differences of about 1,000 pounds.
What she would like to see happen. Veterans, Patriots, Memorial, etc. Day parades go on drive-bys and spill all of their blood, or rent a big truck and drive all over them, kill them.
It's so disturbing.
I mean, this is insane to see how these people think. Don, final word.
Well, if you look at this, I'm all about forgiveness, but